off the jump, I gotta make it clear here. I am still gonna follow my 10-year spoiler rule, but we do gotta be careful on this one because while I'm not gonna give like direct spoilers and like a lot of the big ones there's still gonna be some that are gonna directly spoil the first Orphan because that isn't in the 10-year rule. So bear in mind, you probably don't want to watch this review if you have not seen the original Orphan yet and you care about being spoiled. So, Orphan First Kill. This movie we were planning on talking about earlier this year because there was a bogus release date that was out for it back in January. And I was stoked for it because having just gotten the chance to revisit the original Orphan film, I was ready for more Esther craziness. If you've never seen the first movie told the story of this little girl, Esther, who gets adopted by this family that's in need of something to fill this hole in their heart. They just lost, there's been loss for them. There's been a lot of pain for this family, and they're looking to just bring some more love into their lives to help mend a lot of this pain. And that's where they bring in Esther to join their family. And as it turns out, things start going wrong when Esther moves in, and a lot of people start getting hurt, and things start getting a little bit more dangerous around the house. And we find out that Esther may not be as little as she seems. That Esther is actually a middle-aged woman who does not age like the rest of us. Therefore, she looks like she's a child. And the absolute insanity of the original Orphan film, of course, required everybody to suspend their disbelief that somebody could get away with doing something like this. And that's most horror movies. So it shouldn't really be that crazy to say, yeah, of course. I mean, we shouldn't have to assume that, that she couldn't get away with this. Like, it's a horror movie. Of course she can. But not really the point here. So, the original Orphan ended pretty definitively to where you couldn't really make a sequel after that. And again, we are talking about an insane horror film, so I'm sure you probably could argue like a sequel going from it. But realistically, you really shouldn't. And so they go the other route. And instead, William Brent Bell, who, if you recognize that name, we've talked about Stay Alive before, a really big favorite of mine, as well as I just got done this year finally watching The Boy and Brahms' The Boy 2 as well. So this is a guy who definitely has his chops cut out in the horror world. Jamie Colette Serra did not return, the director of the first movie, did not return to come back and do the second one. So new screenwriter, new director for this, but it's a great pathway they chose to go with this, because in this prequel, I think that it would be easy to just go the route of let's show exactly how Esther came to be who she is. Because that's usually what you go with prequels, especially in horror films, is that we want to see the creation of that bad guy. But then the question comes in is, do we really? Like, yeah, we love Freddy Krueger, but is Freddy Krueger that interesting before he becomes like this dream demon who like kills you in your sleep and he's getting revenge for his murder? Like, is he more interesting before his death or after his death? And I would argue after, just because otherwise he's just a normal serial killer. Same thing with Jason. Jason's like a little bit harder with it, but like, do we really care about Jason Voorhees as a child, honestly? There's always been this talk about, tell us about Elias Voorhees, the supposed name of Jason's father. And it's like, that might be cool, but do I really need to see that? Like, I'm good with just, he's got a hockey match, come to Camp Crystal Lake, he's going to murder your ass. I'm okay with that, honestly. And somehow I get the idea here, I'll just throw a spitball, that our screenwriter here of Orphan First Kill, because David Leslie Johnson wrote the first film, and this time David Leslie Johnson helped on the story with some of the ideas, but this was written by David Coggeshall. And I kind of get the idea that it's just, look, let's talk about one of the instances that kind of shaped Esther and who we know her as in the original film. Not the instance, because there's obviously multiple things that have happened, but let's show one of these stories. And I like that approach, because again, the name is going to confuse a lot of people into where they're going to think this is the first tale. And it's not, y'all. This is not the origin story of Esther. It's the origin story of how Esther got that name. But beyond that, it's not really an origin story. And honestly, it's the greatest choice to go with because we don't need to worry about any of the threads from the first film. There's not really any threads that we're that concerned about. Like, we know Esther, or Lena, is this middle-aged woman who is homicidal and just outright insane. And that's kind of all we need to know. That works for us at this point. We don't need to see the creation of it. And so the story shows us that Esther, or Lena, taking this guise of this missing child, Esther, basically is able to implant herself with this family, with this American family who is missing their daughter Esther, and she can just settle right in and take the spot of their daughter. But as she moves in, we find out that while Esther may have a hard time filling those shoes of Esther, she may not want to fill those shoes when she finds out what's really going on in her new family's house. Orphan First Kill, and this is going to be, again, I'm going to be very careful about spoilers in this because we're respecting the 10-year rule here, but Orphan First Kill, I'm just going to be straight about this, takes the route of Don't Breathe 2. And it's very interesting because Don't Breathe 2 is very clearly a sequel. And I talked about my issue with that was that once we see our bad guy, Norman, or the blind man, whatever you want to call him, in the first film and all the shit that he does it really matter what he's doing in the second film? Like, are we invested in him as a protagonist? And some of you might have been. Some of you might have been able to watch that and be like, yeah, sure, absolutely, it's fine, there's no issues with that. But I couldn't do it. I watched the second movie, and honestly, I just hated it just because I was like, why would I ever back this man? I don't care who he's saving. It doesn't matter to me at all. This is a terrible, terrible person. This doesn't make up for what they did, and I can't look at this in a vacuum either. And so that movie failed for me. It largely failed. But looking at Orphan First Kill, that's kind of taking the same idea of, here's this character that does all these terrible things in the original movie, and now we're seeing them, and they're sort of in this like kind of anti-hero kind of position. Do we like this character more? And the answer to that was honestly a resounding yes, because not that Vera Farmiga is not a amazing actor and not a great protagonist in the original film, but I think that it's kind of hard to look through her eyes as the audience. And I don't mean to say that we need any of the other characters to be our eyes in there, but it just, I guess we want something a little bit more neutral than what her character was in that film, and for whatever reason, swapping it over to the extreme other side of it by making our eyes be Esther in this movie somehow works really, really well, because the beginning of the movie gives us what you want to see. It gives us Esther's carnage and shows her how she's just insane and going to do whatever she's going to do. And we do get that Esther that we saw in the original film. But we then find out, as she gets to this new family, she's not necessarily homicidal in certain situations. Like, she's very much controlling herself. It's not necessarily like she wants to completely kill this family or anything. But again, about halfway through, there's a sharp twist to the film that turns it on its head, and suddenly Esther now becomes our protagonist, and that changes so much about the way the movie works. And the movie honestly gets so much better for it. The cast really benefits from this turn as well too, including Julia Stiles, who, she's no stranger to doing horror with things like Dexter and The Omen. She's been in in the genre before, so she's always been the one playing the typical role you might think that she would in these films, and she was giving something very different to do here with Orphan First Kill, and it does so well for her. This is something that Julia Stiles just absolutely does phenomenal with, and just shows that she does still have these surprises up her sleeve. For somebody that we've been watching for 30 years at this point now, she still has these great surprises and performances up her sleeve, and it couldn't have been anybody better in her role as the mother of Esther's new family. And I absolutely love her. She is so great in this movie, to the point to where she overshadows Isabel Fuhrman a lot in this movie. Now, in terms of like the violence and the gore and the kills and everything, again, Esther is like very much becomes our anti-hero in this. And while yes, she's still defending herself, and yeah, a lot of people still die in this movie, the body count isn't the same. It's more than the first movie for sure, but everything is put in such a different way to where we just can't have people dying left and right. And so the stuff that she does to the people in the movie is inherently screwed up for sure. But you wouldn't expect anything less from good old Esther here. Nothing over, like extremely over the top. It's bloody for sure. But again, what is so interesting about it is that outside of the very first part of the movie, most of these deaths is Esther doing the right thing, believe it or not. And there's one death around the, like when we find out the twist of the movie, there's one death that happens right before it that was kind of like, oh my god, like this is in totally a different light once we have the same information that we now have, that we didn't have 5 minutes ago. Like if you look at this death 5 minutes later, it's like, oh my god, this looks completely different now because it was unnecessary. Like it was totally unnecessary, and that's what's so awesome about it. You will be surprised the kind of emotions this movie I think is going to bring out in you. And to further that, I need another sequel. I honestly need another film in this franchise because First Kill does not lead directly into the original movie. And it doesn't have to either, because there's nothing about the first movie that's all like it has this big mythology you're setting up, except saying Esther ended up with that family. So you could potentially do a million more of these sequels till you're ready to connect it to the first movie, or I guess till the technology's not there to make Isabel Fuhrman not look so young anymore. But I say this to say Orphan First Kill is a perfect example of where you can take a franchise and just continue going up with it, honestly. And I do hope that they give this series a third film. It absolutely needs at least one more movie to really get its due. And to really just shine the way that it should. And man, bring back the same team for it. Bring back the exact same team for it. William Brent Bell should absolutely be back to direct it. Isabel Fuhrman obviously needs to come back to star in it. And honestly, let Dave Cogshall come back and write the third one as well too. I'm about it, but check it out. It's free right now on Paramount Plus, y'all. That's Orphan First Kill. Hey everybody, I appreciate you checking out this video, whether it was a review, whether it was a new episode, whether it was an unboxing, an interview, or whatever else. I want to remind you can check out my separate reviews also on my YouTube page, and new full episodes go up every Wednesday night on YouTube at 8:30 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, and on your favorite podcasting platforms at 8 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, like and share. My name is T. We've been talking scary movies. Stay scared.